Today's feature is 1985's House. Horror has found a new home.
Good evening, boils and ghouls.
And I think this movie put us in a very silly mood because literally before we started recording, we were arguing about what we should name the Scarecrow, and I came up with the name of Russell Scarecrow. I think it's very clever.
No,
but
it's not a good name.
Thor came up with something better, apparently.
Well, I originally liked Tommy to reference the Scarecrow in Scary Stories to tell in the dark.
Okay.
But yeah, we should name him Big Ben now.
Oh my god. Okay, so we're in the middle of a global pandemic right now, and honestly, I really needed something to take my mind off of things and to distract me in a very entertaining way, and I can say that Stephen Miner's House did that in spades because this was an entertainingly bad movie.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just going to say this. I knew nothing about this movie going in. Apparently, this was a favorite of hers. She told me nothing about it.
No.
When did you first watch this movie?
Okay, so I watched this movie like a really, really long time ago in the early mid-90s, that kind of thing. And it was really just entertaining. But I love things like The Evil Dead, those kind of horror comedies. We both have kind of that same cheesy sense of humor when it comes to those kinds of movies. Mm-hmm. So I just remembered this movie having a really... It was interesting, it was entertaining, it was terrible in all the best ways. And that I knew that this would be something that would take a lot of people's minds off of the state of the world right now. We need some enjoyment, we need some fun, while still maintaining kind of that social distance.
This is a house where no one should live.
Woman lived here before you was nuts. Wouldn't be surprised if someone just got fed up and offed her.
She was my aunt.
Heart of gold, though.
And what better way to pass the time during a quarantine than to catch up on some horror movies? And, I have to ask you, did this movie catch you off guard with how entertainingly bad it was? Because I certainly wasn't expecting this amount of cheese. I mean, I love 80s cheese, but this was just bizarre.
Oh, no, see, but that's the reason why I loved it. So, just to catch you guys up on a little bit of the plot, because honestly, the plot is kind of cheesily confusing. You find yourself going, what? When did that happen? So basically, you have the main character who is a horror writer, and played by William Katz,
who was Carrie's prom date in the Brian De Palma version of Carrie. And,
honestly, he hasn't changed much. His hair's not curling.
I just have to say, I think that night with Carrie must have driven him insane because he gives a batshit crazy performance in this movie. And actually, before you describe the rest of the plot, let me go into a little bit of backstory.
Go for it.
So I was doing some research, and this was directed by Stephen Miner, the man who helmed Friday the 13th Part 2. Not one of my favorite of the Friday the 13th sequels, but it had some entertaining moments. And apparently, the original screenplay written by Fred Dekker. Fred Dekker, you might know him from The Monster Squad, another 80s classic.
Rudy, question. Shit. Know any virgins?
But apparently,
very still in keeping with that kind of.
But apparently, the original screenplay actually had a very dramatic tone. Mm-hmm. He actually wrote it as a very serious horror movie, but they hired this other screenwriter to come in and add some comedic elements. And for the first 30 minutes or so, it does kind of have a serious tone to it. But about halfway through, things take a sharp turn, and it just enters bizarre land. So I will let you describe the rest of the plot, and then we'll get into what we loved about this movie, and then we'll address some criticisms. But Thor, why don't you tell our audience the general premise of House?
Okay, so House starts off with a down-on-his-luck horror writer. He's got, writer's block for his new book, which is supposed to be talking about the Vietnam War and his horrific and traumatizing experiences in it. He recently lost his son. They don't know if he was kidnapped or if he's dead. They've got no clue.
Yeah.
Because he just suddenly disappears. Because of the son being gone, that ended up with his marriage to I'm guessing a soap opera actress. I don't think she was a porn actress.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't mean to insult this actress, but she kind of had the demeanor of a porn star. But anyway.
I still think it was soap opera. He's thinking it's porn, but yeah. So they got a divorce and he's just completely miserable. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite things showing this misery was when he goes home, he takes out the obligatory TV dinner and just throws it, box it all into the microwave.
Yeah. To show how miserable this guy is, they have him walk into his kitchen, take a frozen dinner out of the refrigerator, and without taking the dinner out of the box, he just chucks it into a microwave, slams the door shut, and cooks it while it's still inside the box.
Anywho, so obviously a chef he is not. His aunt dies, and he decides to move into the house that is supposed to be getting sold, but for some reason he has to stay in it. And weird shenanigans start happening. He decided to stay there in order to have some solitude.
Social distancing. In order to write his book,
he has the nosy neighbor, played by George Wendt. He has some weird chick that is totally like on his nut. We do not know why, but apparently it ends up being because she needs a babysitter.
That's what I thought at first, and we'll get into some of the more bizarre moments of this movie, but I have to bring up this blah neighbor of his, because essentially what happens is, at first you think that she has the hots for him, but what she ends up doing is
I know when guys like to work.
Yeah.
And I know when they like to play.
She ends up swimming in his pool, without his permission. She gets out of the pool. The camera is lingering on her in a very creepy way.
It's
she's
looking at her. You can tell that the cameraman was like really zoned in on her ass, which is kind of sad because she really didn't have one. So maybe he was looking for it, and that's why it was on there for so long. But
I thought the whole point of the scene was, her seducing him, but it turns out that she actually just wants him to watch over her child as she goes and does other things.
Okay, so anyways, he goes and moves into the house. He's trying to write. Weird shenanigans happen. A monster in the closet.
Literally.
Garden tools that are just floating around trying to kill something or someone. Some kind of ogre lady that can change into his ex at a moment's notice and then comes back to try and kill him, and it's weird. The lady drops off her son with a strange man
who she had met
once
after using his swimming pool without his permission.
And she's just like, here's my kid, watch him. Dude goes ahead and watches the kid, saves the kid from monsters, gives him a bath after saving him from monsters, because apparently it's safe now. We'll get into that. And then he realizes that this house is a portal into another dimension, I guess.
Absolutely.
And realizes that he can save his son. So at some point he gets dragged into this other dimension, realizes that it's about the house is trying to torture him with his guilt. Then he realizes that somehow, or because of a painting his crazy aunt did, which the crazy aunt committed suicide at the beginning of the movie, realizes his son is somehow trapped in the bathroom medicine cabinet mirror. He breaks the mirror into this TARDIS-like void, bigger on the inside. And he jumps in. There's some winged skull thing that snatches his gun. He's able to get to his son, rescue him, get him out. Somehow the kid, even though it's like years later, is still, same age. And then and he's happy he has his son. Let's go. And there's the guy who's apparently pissed that he wasn't, that the main character didn't kill him. Usually ghosts are pissed that you did kill him. That was a unique twist. Anyways, chase. Big Ben, who's the zombie Vietnam ghost ends up getting a grenade shoved into him. It would have been funnier if it was down his pants, but instead it was up his rib cage. Blows up right as the ex-wife drives up to the house with him coming out with their son in an epic double doors opened and here I am.
God.
And it ends with a freeze frame on his creepy smile.
It could have been the ending of a Brady Bunch episode. Literally, he just
a little twisted
he
Brady
just smiles.
Bunch
He just smiles into the camera, and the frame freezes, and then it fades to black, and we see the credits. And thank you.
Hey, it still wasn't as abrupt as The Grudge.
Daddy?
But no one is ever alone in the house.
This house knows everything about you. Leave while you can.
She described the plot of this movie, and you might be thinking to yourself, wow, does some of that shit really happen? But it really does. And, I just have to say that, how earlier I mentioned that there was a bizarre tonal shift about halfway through? I really meant it because, like I said, for the first 30 minutes of this movie, it did have a somewhat serious tone. We meet William Catt, who plays this oppressed author. He's trying to write his next big book. He wants to live a life of solitude so that he can finish his Vietnam memoirs.
Yep.
And so he ends up inheriting this house, which had been previously owned by his aunt. His aunt committed suicide. And, there are sequences that are set up to be horrific.
Yes.
Like, there's a moment where
the aunt.
There's a moment where he hears a creepy voice in the distance, and he investigates, and he goes into his aunt's old bedroom, and her ghost is standing there, mocking him.
Not mocking him, warning him, literally telling him, get out.
Mm-hmm.
The house is evil. It got to me. That's the reason why I died. It's going to trick you too. It's going to try and kill you too. It knows everything about you.
Mm-hmm.
Get out. And then the ghost tries to hang herself and vanishes. He decides this is a great time to, just stay and chill.
And apart from a couple of weird moments, the narrative is taken pretty seriously because, we find out his backstory. He had a son who went mysteriously missing, and they couldn't, find out what happened to him. And he had recently divorced from his wife, who is now living in Los Angeles, making a career as a soap opera actress. The moment it takes a turn is when he opens the closet, and this
monster
hulking animatronic lunges out at him, which, by the way, he barely has any reaction to. He just kind of shrugs his shoulders, and he orders all this camera equipment so that he can set up the cameras in the bedroom to capture evidence of this monster. And when he does this, he dresses in his old Vietnam uniform. And the moment that he, turns the cameras on, he runs out of the room. He does a somersault down the stairs.
Oh, yeah.
He bursts out of the front entrance.
Slides on his knees.
He does this heroic pose. And I was just thinking to myself, what kind of movie is this trying to be? Like, this is turning into something very, very strange, and it escalates into complete insanity. And I have to mention some of my favorite moments in this movie. Mm-hmm. I think my favorite sequence overall was the sequence with the policeman, because let me explain what happens. Okay, so he is assaulted by this amorphous blob, this ghoul who had been mimicking his ex-wife. It's this big, disgusting creature who he ends up taking out, and he ends up blowing it with a shotgun. However, it transforms back into his ex-wife, so he thinks that he had accidentally shot his ex-wife. He hides the ex-wife's body in a closet. His creeper of a neighbor calls the police. Which, by the way...
Well, at least he's calling the police. The guy's shooting a gun. He was acting all weird and everything else like that. He was smart and he called the police and he said that there was a possible suicide attempt in a house that has already had a suicide attempt. So, although he was creepy for most of it because he was coming over uninvited, he was, basically kind of stalking the author dude. In this situation specifically, I would say hats off to that guy. because he called, even though he snagged the guy's address book, he saw that there was a mental issue. He called the dude's ex-wife. He tried to get the guy some help. He was actually, even if he was being a little bit stalkery, he was actually doing what somebody should do in these situations.
Yeah, he acted appropriately, but it's such a strange escalation of events because the two policemen show up at his front door. He still has a shotgun in his hands. They're yelling at him. They're telling him to put the shotgun down. They recognize him as this famous author, so everything is good. You're a famous celebrity, so we're not going to question anything. It's LA. He makes up this bullshit story that he was cleaning his shotgun and it accidentally fired. By the way, who cleans a loaded shotgun? And the two policemen just buy it. So after that, he invites them into his house for coffee. And the policemen don't question anything. He is acting exceedingly suspicious. His eyes are bulging out. He is twitching. He's acting nervous as hell. No! Yeah, but they are just completely fine with it. Don't go in there. And they leave the house without questioning anything.
Yeah.
Another favorite sequence of mine is when the little boy gets kidnapped by these two monsters.
Wait. Make sure you're talking which little boy, because there's the chick's son and then his son.
His slutty neighbor, who basically throws her son on him. He reluctantly agrees to babysit his slutty neighbor's wife for the evening.
Son.
Oh my.
He reluctantly agrees to babysit his slutty neighbor's son for the evening. So there's a moment where the son gets kidnapped by these two monsters who pull him up this chimney.
And it's just, for me, the two monsters, by the way, look like somebody who maybe interned for 2 weeks at Jim Henson's puppet creature shop made them.
Well, apparently the animatronics in this movie were only made over a matter of weeks. To my understanding, not much time was put into these animatronics because these two monsters look absolutely terrible. They look like garbage. They look like rejects from the Garbage Pail Kids.
They look like someone went to Spirit and got into the bargain bin.
And he ends up rescuing his slutty neighbor's son, from these monsters.
Who, by the way, looks like he's having a blast the entire time.
What would be the logical thing to do? The logical thing to do would be to haul ass, to get the flying fuck out of this house. But what does he do? Hard cut to the next scene where he's giving the little boy a bath. A very, nice.
Innocent.
It's a nice, innocent moment after this little boy had almost been kidnapped by these two hideous monsters.
Okay, and this is where we get into the fun part. You guys remember how there's this stereotype of Caucasians, white people,
oh my God,
not having any kind of self-preservation instinct in any horror movie. These kinds of movies is where it came from. Within an hour of entering into the house, he saw his auntie. She told him, get out. Literally, get out. No, I think I'm good here. It's okay. It was a suggestion.
He doesn't listen.
Suggestion.
By the way, if you guys want to visit some real scary houses, I would recommend visiting any residence in Scottsdale, Arizona. You'll get a really scary experience.
Okay. Anyways, so this is definitely one of the things that I love about this movie, and this is the reason why I suggested it to you, because it was, like you said, it's great escapism. It's terrible, so it's great to have a couple of drinks, laugh with, yourself, if you can, schedule some kind of Skype or something like that in order to watch it with other people remotely. It's one of those kinds of movies where you just have fun with it.
It has been waiting for him.
Hi.
Sandy.
Now, it wants you.
Now,
God, I wish this was filled with booze.
Okay, you tortured me with Leprechaun last time. I get to do this one. Now, let's just
We
say
go
that
from Leprechaun to this. We're having a hell of a week.
Well, it's great. But the biggest thing is that this movie is not meant to be anything other than something to laugh at, something to have fun with. The technical aspects of this movie, you could write a book on the mistakes, including see if you guys can find the boom mic.
Can I talk about the technical aspects and also
Go for it.
Okay, first of all, from a writing standpoint, this movie is just a mishmash of all of these really irritating cliches. You have the man who is having these horrific Vietnam flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
You have the family member who died, and so they're haunting the main character.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, man.
You have the family that's fallen apart because of a missing child. You have the creepy next door neighbor. You have white people that really are just.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't a very cohesive screenplay, and like I mentioned before, you have these two different tones. You have semi-serious horror colliding with over-the-top comedy.
Which made it fun and unique.
It really did. It made for an enjoyable experience, but from a writing standpoint...
Oh, God, no.
No. It wasn't very well put together.
No.
It was entertaining, but it just wasn't very well put together. And from a technical aspect, this looks like it was directed by the man who gave us Friday the 13th Part 2. Because, well, first of all...
Which it was.
Yes, I understand this is meant to be a horror comedy, but even in something like Evil Dead or even Evil Dead 2, I mean, Sam Raimi created some legitimate atmosphere in those movies.
Okay,
this movie,
the
majority of this movie looks like it could be a soap opera. Just most sequences aren't moody. They, aren't very atmospheric, and there's one exterior shot of the house that they use over and over and over again. It's the same low angle shot that pans slowly to the left, and they use it over and over and over again. And there's in the scene where he investigates the closet for the first time, you can literally see the shadow of the boom mic up on the wall. And
dude, you gave it away. It was supposed to be like a secret Mickey. Now they know where to look.
You can make all types of excuses like, "Ooh, it's a haunted boom mic." It's supposed to add to the surrealism of the story.
Sure. Okay. It was a lazy casting move. Or a lazy crew move. That's pretty much it. And nobody noticed it with enough time for them to go back and do reshoots. I will have to say that, there were just, when it comes to the writing, there was just so many things that if you look at it, you're going to be going,
what?
That made no sense. So, like, for instance, one of my scenes that I'm just like, I love because it's so stupid is the main character gets dragged into a closet by the monster. George Wendt is like screaming and trying to save him from getting dragged into the closet. He still gets dragged in. He has this little Vietnam flashback, and then he comes back the next morning, and there's George Wendt sitting on a mattress right beside the haunted closet with a bottle of Jack. Sleeping.
As people do.
Never mind that. Seriously, you're sleeping next to a closet that you just saw a monster rip a guy out of this reality, so you're going to get drunk and sit on the mattress and fall asleep there. That's precious.
Hashtag white people. You make a really solid point, and another thing that has to be mentioned, this was released in 1985. The same year, we had films such as Fright Night, Reanimator, George Romero's Day of the Dead, and I think the reason this movie has lived on is because it is so memorable in how bizarre and wacky it is.
Yes. And the thing about this movie, especially if you're a film student or you like to, think about what could be, is that you see that there's a lot of potential in what they're trying to do. This whole crazy, timey-wimey mishmash of all these different things going on. You see how there could have been a really interesting pathway through all of that and still preserve everything that is in the storyline, including a little bit of that tonal shift. But you needed to have a director that could handle that kind of tightrope.
If Sam Raimi had directed this movie, it would have been amazing.
It would have been amazing.
It would have been the best horror film of the 80s, hands down.
Oh yeah, no, he would have brought such an amazing idea, just an amazing vision to it. So I agree with you there.
But yeah, the visual style wasn't impressive. The direction was pretty flat. The performances were
hilarious.
William Katt
gave Santa Claus from Silent Night, Deadly Night 2 a run for his money when it came to crazy eyes and eyebrow acting.
The crazy eyebrow acting, which I have grown to love so much of these kind of movies.
Don't play the drinking game where you take a shot every time he does the eyebrow acting. You'll die.
Right.
House. Enter at your own risk.
But overall, this movie was enjoyable and how weird it was. Would I recommend it? I definitely would. Definitely watch it with a group of people who have the same sense of humor as you do. You'll get some laughs, and I would probably watch it again. It was entertaining. What can I say?
That's what you want from a horror movie. Not all the time do horror movies have to terrify you and be serious and be something that makes you question, your existence or be incredibly profound. And there's a time and place for those movies. And yes, they're epic and they're amazing and they're great. There's also a time and place for movies like these.
Yes.
And honestly, right now is the time, and definitely here was the place.
One more thing I want to mention before we wrap things up here. I was doing some research on this movie, and apparently the stunt coordinator was none other than Kane Hodder himself.
Oh, I did not know that. That's cool.
Another Friday the 13th connection. Isn't that cool?
That is cool. Now, I will say this. If you guys like this, watch this movie and you like it, there are like 2-3 sequels.
I don't know.
And they get just as bad.
I don't know if I could stomach any more of this franchise. But yes, we have a real treat in store for you next week, though. So here's what we're going to do. We were going to watch some of the newer releases that had been scheduled, like A Quiet Place Part 2, but understandably, their release dates had been pushed back. Pushed back. So we're going to be talking about a very underrated movie, a movie that both of us really like. We're going to ask our friend Kim to send her thoughts as well. We're going to be talking about Wes Craven's Red Eye, released in 2005, a very underrated movie. It's chilling. It features a magnificent Cillian Murphy performance. I am excited to talk about that movie. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us in our discussion of House. Enjoy yourself, because it's definitely one of those types of movies. If you like this, please subscribe to our channel, Round the Clock Frights. Have a very scary night, and stay safe, as always.
And if a ghost tells you to get out of your house, listen. Please.
And please agree with me that the name of that scarecrow should be Russell Scarecrow.
No! It should be Tommy.
If she says so.
Okay, so you guys have to help us solve this. We really need your help, because we've been going back and forth about this for about a year now. What we need to name the scarecrow.
It's Russell Scarecrow.
So please, in the comments below, tell us what it should be.
It's Russell Scarecrow.
It is not. It's Tommy.
Oh, by the way, guys, shout out to my wife. If you like my new green hair, she was the one who did it. So, yeah.
Vote on the name for the scarecrow. Tell us what to name him.
Bye.